Today's a special day. We've not only received a design document that reveals 10 new cut levels, but also the master disc that presents many unused songs. On top of that, several hard-to-reach developers have come forward with new info for this monumental conclusion. This happens to be the most revealing installment in this documentary series. So let's go out with a bang. Despite the popular belief that Spyro Enter the Dragonfly's music was only composed by Stuart Copeland, the truth is actually much different. There were a total of 4 additional composers, 5 if you include Copeland. Talented music writers Kenneth Burgomaster and Peter Neff did a large portion of the soundtrack, while Stuart touched up the last 10% of each song with his classic instrumentation. In order to clear up the confusion on this matter, we called up the other composers, so here's a call held with Kenneth.
So what happened was, I was hired by Stuart's agent to help him on a previous movie. Basically, what we did is Stuart told us the vibe of the music that he wanted. We used this sample library called Vocal Planet. It had all those cool vocal. He sort of said, use those with a mix with a little electronic sort of vibe, sort of have fun with it. And we used Reason. I called in Peter to help out, to do some additional writing on it. Basically, we gave everything to Stuart, and then he kind of just added a few things on top of those files. So he added some percussion, or he added some bell sounds. But it was his basic direction that kind of formulated the sound of the music. We didn't have actual singers, we just had these sampled phrases and we'd use them. We also did have some video clips from the game, little looped clips from the game, and we did have some of those to check out. For example, there's a farm. We need some sort of country-based stuff, but keep it in the vein of what we're doing. I remember doing a couple cues where we'd use some fiddle or some harmonica, and then also use some of those world vocal samples on top of that. So here's one of mine, Dojo Tank Practice. It's got some Native American sample. It sounds like Stuart put some drums over it and some bells. Luau Island. He probably said there was some sort of Hawaiian vibe or something to it, which is why I've got some ukulele. And then I got these funny vocal samples. Oh, and I have that slide guitar, and then we just had to make these things last. I think I did a tiki drum one, too. So I did Rainbow Speedway. Oh, this is mine, Rip Talk Factory Bombe. It's funny, because Stuart didn't have anything to do with a lot of these. We basically did all the tracks, although he's added some stuff on here. This is mine, Oasis Speedway. But they added another vocal on top of it. Somebody added some junk on top of it. It's not in the right key. I don't know what's going on there. Well, this is mine too, Platform Peril. This is my favorite one, actually. I love the Native American vibe. All right, let's go to Terrible Tower. This is mine. God, I scored this whole game.
After this phone call, Kenneth managed to track down the master disc soundtrack of the game, which is a disc composers make to archive all their work on a project. This disc contained a whopping 42 songs, whilst the final game only uses 28, meaning that 14 songs found on this disc are entirely unused and aren't even present in the files of Spyro 4. We can't stress enough how important getting these tracks is as a whole. Plus, they also give insight into more cut levels and how far they got before getting axed. This music would have never seen the light of day if Kenneth didn't track them down for us. With that in mind, turn your volume up. Among the master disc, 3 songs heavily stood out. One of those tracks just so happens to be a full mix of Pirates, aka the most infamous cut song. As we said in the original documentary, Pirates was intended for Cutthroat Cove. But next up we also got the intro cutscenes music. Previously it was not available by itself because the character dialogue, sound effects and music were all one audio file.
Wow! It's just a float, you scaredy cat.
And finally, a bit of knowledge you may be familiar with. The song used for Crop Circle Country's platform panic is actually corrupt in the final game due to a file issue. But strangely, the master has it in a revised form with new instruments and melodies. It's even appropriately named Sneak Rev 1, as in Revision 1. Almost miraculously, we also got a hold of a super early design document dated February 12, 2001, a full 20 months before the game released. At this point in development, Check 6 planned a full 4-hub world experience, with 16 levels in all, excluding the hubs, and each world being themed around weather, starting with sunshine, then rain, snow, and ending with wind. The first level chronologically that was cut happens to be Sparks Pond, which is known as the Dragonfly level here before transforming into Dragonfly Dojo in the later half of 2001. It contains lantern-like structures that glow from the inside, including bioluminescent fruit and strange glowing dragonflies. All of the enemies pitched for the level don't seem to have made it into the final game. However, assets from Sparks Pond are reused for Luau Island's trees, literally having SP in the file name as an abbreviation. Baked Alaska is also present here with other possible names such as Dangerous Dunes and Scorching Sands. Interestingly, one of the pitched enemies named Sand Burrowing Riptok is described as looking like Bugs Bunny, which ties into how Warner Bros. Was a heavy inspiration for this level. Another point of interest happens to be how the structures were meant to be derived from Spanish culture. Next up, Cutthroat Cove is mentioned exactly how Joel Goodsell previously described the level to us, being seen in the Rain Hub. But this document also mentions enemies, one being a Nork with a pirate costume, a Triceratops with an eye patch and sword, as well as a Riptok cannon shooter. After all, the first enemy types they thought of bringing back for Spyro 4 were the Norks, but they were cut super early so they saw minimal work if any. Now let's look at our first brand new level, the Hilltop level. It would have been set in a mushroom-filled set of green hills with light daytime drizzle. Quite fitting for this hub, as even the enemies reflect the scenery. One contains an interesting mechanic for a Spyro enemy, as its lower body would hide under the ground, giving its presence away to only sharp-eyed players. Enchanted Forest is also present, but in a snowy state, and continuing the trend of Spyro 4 being filled with references to other media, an enemy pitched for this level, Babe the Big Blue Riptok, is a direct reference to Paul Bunyan's Babe the Blue Ox. That one wasn't quite so subtle. Another fresh level happens to be the Iceberg level, possibly ending up with the name Yeti Palooza. The skating Stegosaurus Riptok enemies and the giant iceberg islands this level would have featured make you wonder how fantastic it would have turned out. Besides, it even took place in the midnight sun, with 50% of the level below the surface in the freezing bergs. Subsequently, the entire final hub, Windy Hub, and all of its contents were ultimately cut. A unique mechanic of this world, the air currents, would have transferred Spyro from ledge to ledge, potentially being different from the classic whirlwinds. Its first world, Flambe Falls, was a volcanic atmosphere full of chefs. This concept sounds like it would have been an extension to the dragon cultures in the original Spyro, being inhabited by the best dragon chefs in the land. Furthermore, it seems that the Tornado level seemingly made it exceptionally far in development, as the design document mentions Riptok pterodactyls. Sound familiar? This same enemy ended up being used in Monkey Monastery, which may explain why it features one unused frame of an attack animation. But what's not included in the final game is the dangerous tornado threatening the sky of this unseen world, with Norks on broomsticks being an early enemy concept. Another uniquely mysterious level, the Haunted House, actually seems to have an asset that made the final cut. The giant spider this document mentions may be the exact same spider used in Jurassic Jungle's tower minigame. However, the environment of this unused level would have appeared very grim and been based on old monster movies, as it would have taken place in a giant haunted house with stunted trees featured on the exterior sections. Lastly, what the document calls the Escher-inspired level. This concept may have ended up getting called Vertigo Valley or Chaos Castle, but for those not aware, MC Escher was a very famous artist renowned for his perspective works. The lithographs he created depicted crazy situations that frequently used stairs and peculiar angles meant to trick your brain. This level would have taken inspiration from him, which is obvious given the name. How this would have been implemented in Spyro would have been a very strange delight to say the least. Besides cut levels, there's still other significant tidbits, such as Dragon Keys being an early name for Luau Island, just like the Enchanted Forest dialogue stated, or how Cloud9's original concept was to have half the level be daytime and the other half be nighttime. This idea went so far in development that the hourglass is plastered with moon textures on the top and sun textures on the bottom. Even the machines that you electrify are internally called light machines, which likely means that interacting with them would have changed the level from night to day, being the original objective of Cloud9. On the other hand, Honey Marsh at this point wasn't even centered around honey. It was just a murky green swamp based around Greek ruins, as well as spitting frogs and poison snakes being unused enemy ideas. Even the gator NPCs were originally planned to be an enemy concept. Jurassic Jungle also saw enemy changes, with a Nork lion tamer being an idea, as well as a rifle-wielding Stegosaurus. Even colourful tropical birds were planned to populate the level as decor. Nevertheless, Monkey Monastery is relatively the same here except for the Nork concept. On the other side of the spectrum, Thieves' Den is spelled differently with a ton of removed ideas. First off, an invisible predator-style thief was one enemy they decided upon. Surely that would have frightened the key audience at the time, which may explain its removal, as well as alternating fire and ice caverns, which sadly weren't used. The entrance to the den was also inspired by the Cave of Wonders from the Disney classic Aladdin. Now it all makes sense. As it turns out, this standard press paragraph sent out in early 2002 is describing the game's original design. It directly mentions rainbows, tornadoes, monsoons, and snowflakes, which are tied to the 4 hubs we've just talked about. If you've been paying close attention, you might notice how all of the final levels are present in this document, excluding Crop Circle Country. Oddly, it doesn't seem to have been thought of as a concept at this stage, or it was removed earlier on and then brought back. One of the much harder to contact members of Check 6, Saji Johnson, was a really key member of Enter the Dragonfly as a whole. In fact, he was the only designer to last throughout the entire development of Spyro. During our call, he touched on the issues with the game's development, such as Universal's control over the project, as well as going into detail about how Ricky Rukavina seriously changed the entire direction of Enter the Dragonfly, for better or for worse.
When I first got there, I was a junior designer. I was working on the AI system, first guy putting in levels, first guy doing all that stuff. Game design, world population, basically everything that you expect that you'd be building out into the levels. At the end of the project, I was a senior designer instead of being a lead. Ricky's a lead on that project. That was his vision for Spyro. But as far as all the work goes and managing that and making sure things are getting in, that's my responsibility. Pretty early on, we were just blocking out all the basic levels. When Universal took a much more active hand, they sent Ricky Rukavina over. He decided he had a particular vision for Spyro, and that's what he wanted to work on. And that's what we wound up making. We cut a large number of levels just because there wasn't enough time to complete them. If someone's coming in saying this isn't Spyro enough, or I want to change, then that's just how that goes. So with a bunch of changes consistently happening throughout the project, like with almost any project, but a lot of these were devastating. That basically killed the time we had to make the project, to build out these levels, to make sure the abilities worked, make sure various mechanics worked. Since there's a change in direction, once Universal had a much more active hand in the project. There's supposed to be a few more, side characters that are supposed to be introduced. And I think there's also a female dragon character we were working on. They wanted a clone, basically, of the other Spyros based off, oh, those are successful, so that's what you guys should be doing, rather than actually allowing us to push the envelope and do anything new. There's a lot more worlds to run through, and it's all just kind of got really chopped down into what we got in the end. From the boss change to level layouts to level ideas, as far as, hey, I want to have aliens or whatever other idea would come in, like, okay, well, fine, this is what it is. Ultimately, in the end, you're in a position where this is what they want, and they're paying you to do it, so unfortunately, you can't really decline. You can only argue your points, but in the end, if they say, hey, this is what we want to do, that's what you end up doing. I understand if we have a bunch of plans and we don't have time, we can't build them. But we have plenty of levels that were built, and then some got changed. Sparks Pond was one. I got changed to Dragonfly Dojo, because it's supposed to be like an intro level to kind of get you familiar with what's going on in the world. Just competing visions, and we don't have the influence or power to say, we just need to make a good product. Then you are basically, taking someone's ideas that are forced upon you, and you're doing the best you can with them. Definitely things could have been better. I think the team did well dealing with the changes and the implementation we had to do in order to hit the new direction we were given. There's a large number of just things that seemed more Spyro-esque to the development team, but not so much to the guys in the direction. I think we have tanks and other guns, and we had a couple different things that seemed fun, but at some point it's like, well, we need these sort of mini games. So it wasn't so much like, well, you guys should come with something cool. These are the sort of mini games I want to see using these items. So I think that's where we got this tank mini game from. Like, all right, well, that didn't really seem like the thing we were going to do before. Originally, I don't think we had a plane, since it made no sense that you're a dragon, you have wings. There's a particular direction of, this is what I want to see in this game. You guys are developers, we're paying you, so you're going to do it. Had it been a thing where they actually, I guess they trust and understood the vision we had for the game, and let us make that, would have been fine. Yes, it was a lot of work, but then teams working their asses off to get it done. But once characters were cut, levels were changed, arbitrary decisions are made because they're the Spyro experts. They have the vision, and they're going to lead this thing through and make this a big title because it should be an easy win. There's some of the reviews from Spyro 4 were like, oh, it was nothing new, it was nothing original. We did nothing to advance the character. You're not supposed to change it wholesale, but we did nothing to really make it a different experience for a new generation of players. And the next one that came out said, we need to change this up somewhat. We just can't stick to the old tricks. So it was very, very unfortunate. It's just a very interesting time. Late assets, a lot of late nights, a lot of hard work, and then just a lot of interference. Anything you were trying to do or you planned out for, saying, all right, we can do this much work in this much time, this is what we're going to do, everyone knows what you have to do, let's do it. Once that gets changed, like, all right, well, all that work still has to happen. It doesn't make sense anymore. All the mechanics and things you were trying to build out, can you still do those? Do you have time? Does it fit someone's vision of the game? It was a very interesting project. You know how to deal with it, that's all.
When Check 6 was founded in 1998, Rick Boltman took the position of being a main founder of the company. His involvement led to the creation of their proprietary engine, Maya Real-Time SDK. However, even though he never directly worked on Spyro, his early code he created ended up being used on the game. Let's learn more about Check 6's early days to better understand the company as a whole.
I knew a friend from school, from undergrad from the University of Toronto, Brent Oster, who had started a game company of his own, and we all worked out of the Sight, Sound, and Motion offices to go work on this Electronic Arts flight sim. I was the physics simulation guy, or the physics guy. We were making a flight simulator, so I started by doing all of the flight dynamics. We were starting from scratch, building a game engine from no lines of code, and we worked crazy hours, and we met all of our milestones, but after 6 months they cancelled us without cause. So after Electronic Arts cancelled our flight sim, it was early 99, we were out of work. They paid us like half the contract value because they just terminated without cause. You know, we had met all our milestones. So they gave us a nice load of cash to keep working on, or finding stuff. So we ended up shopping our game engine around that we had written to that point, and we met up, I don't remember any of the names, but Alias Wavefront had an office in Santa Barbara, California. And we met up with two of the guys and showed them the game engine running in real time. And they thought, oh, this is great, let's integrate this into Maya, and then we can sell this game engine as Maya's real time. We integrated the game engine into the Maya editor, so you could just build things in Maya and then press a button and have it running in real time. This was revolutionary in 1999. So I didn't just do physics when we were doing those two games. It was three of us programming crazy hours, doing absolutely every task under the sun needed to make these demos. It was Joe, Brent, and I. Joe went his way to work on his casino games, and I joined Rainbow Studios. That left Brent without, two key programmers. He needed help, and he needed work, and I think that's when he sort of merged with the Activision guys and got Spyro. Check 6 was because Brent was a fighter pilot in the Canadian Air Force, and I was the pilot. And Check 6, and when you're flying, means watch your back. You know how you have a clock? 12 o'clock is straight in front of you, 3 o'clock is to your right, 9 o'clock is to your left, 6 o'clock is behind you. So when you say Check 6, it means, hey, watch out behind you, there's an enemy airplane. We had another game called Jester's Quest, where we had a little jester.
Whoa, what was that?
Jester's Quest.
Right, Jester's Quest was a prototype game Check 6 made in their super early days in order to test out their engine. It was a 3D platformer oddly featuring a jester with the face of a skeleton. Whoever ended up buying their engine would have received Jester's Quest for free as a bonus. Too bad everyone who ever bought Maya Real-Time SDK returned it just as quickly as it was purchased, due to its major flaws and unfinished nature. Also, now is a good time to mention that Jason's debug system he created to program the baby dragonflies is present in the final game. Typically, this kind of thing would be removed, however, it's possible to enable it. Doing so shows the point systems they fly between, with land and air variants. Let's allow Jason to briefly clarify how he created this.
But I remember working on the baby dragonflies. That was fun because I used my limited early AI knowledge then to come up with the program for that. I had the level designers basically put a cloud of points around where the dragonfly could fly, and then I would code it so that the baby dragonfly could basically fly between any of those points in the cloud as long as there was nothing blocking the way. It would kind of try to stay away from you and bank and turn.
Starting on Aliens Colonial Marines, Clancy was a programmer who helped out a lot on various subjects. He mainly recalls a good amount of tech info of his time at Check 6. However, he also has info on the original prototypes of Spyro in 2001, when the game was a far cry from the final project. For example, the more mature version of Spyro Check 6 had pitched actually saw several months of work. It even received functional prototypes of this very different Spyro experience.
We worked on Spyro Enter the Dragonfly. It was a great game, but they wrecked that at the beginning for the same reason they wrecked the Aliens game, because they did not believe in asset management. They were good at the code. When we wrote code, it was safe, and we had source control and everything, so if somebody made a mistake, we could fall back and fix it. Now, the scripts we did keep in source control, But the art, the actual art and audio and video, stuff like that, they did not. We'd go to show it to Fox or Universal Studios. We'd have a beautiful build. And there's a big crunch all night, big crunch for a whole week. Because we really want to make the build look good. Because we're going to go show it to the people who are paying us. So you work all week, copying to the wall, Okay, make sure you don't overwrite my stuff. They tried everything in their power. Okay, just don't overwrite my stuff. And they had an agreement. They even passed around a gavel. You cannot put in your art until you have this gavel. They tried everything. Still didn't work. But they shipped it. And it sold 10 million copies. It was crap. And everyone was disappointed. And now everyone hates Universal Studios for putting that out. And I don't blame them. The Spyro I played at Check 6 was fun. It was so fun. I would take breaks from working on Aliens to go play Spyro. It was just so fun. And they had a great designer, Scott Smith. I made sure he got on the Aliens team. But he was the best. So all of his levels were just awesome. The thing they shipped, I did not see any of those things. I saw a few levels where you fly around, you fly to the top of the mountain, you Dragonfly, blah, blah, blah. It was just boring and terrible. I worked hard, and I stayed late, and I didn't stay late because, hey, we got to stay late tonight. I stayed late because I loved what I was doing. Aliens got killed, like I told you, and Spyro made it, and it sold a lot, but it sucked. I'm not proud of that game.
The last place in the world you might think to find Check 6 assets might happen to be Spyro Orange, the Cortex Conspiracy. But, as it turns out, Ember's original Check 6 design is here in the form of a trading card that Moneybag sells. She's even the original colour they created her as, orange. Despite it being a super low resolution image to fit on the hardware, it's the best we have to work with. Even a Hero's Tales Ember was originally orange in development, as the textures are still left over in an unused form. Perhaps as to distinguish her from the original Check 6 vision, Eurocom and Traveller's Tales decided to make her pink with a heart necklace. However, it does not even stop there. The Dragon Realm's Castle Equinox modelled for Spyro 4 was also reused as a background element. Thanks to Universal demanding asset reuse on the GBA games, we get a glimpse into more cut content. Considering Emilio and Emiliano were responsible for a decent portion of the soundtrack, but got no credit whatsoever thanks to their contracts, contacting Emiliano proved to be just as helpful as Kenneth, as he also provided fantastic insight and even his tracks he did for the game. He worked along with his friend Gustavo Garcia, who recorded guitar chords for tracks such as Lava Slide and Crop Circle Country. In total, the duo did 4 songs for the game, 2 which were used and 2 which weren't. Quite recently, some brand new prototype footage emerged showing off numerous differences, and considering this gameplay uses an early Sparks model, it's likely dated around the E3 build from May 2002, or in other words, it's about 4 months before the final PS2 build date of September 21st, so let's break down some important details. First off, Dragonfly Dojo features its early skybox, looking quite similar to the style of the PS1 skies, as well as the pole Riptok enemies using their early textures, which has been seen in an IGN clip, the game's trailer, and many screenshots. They even have entirely different death animations for this enemy and the ninja. Alternate textures can also be seen geometry-wise for pretty much every section of this level. Even the gem baskets are using different, brighter textures which ended up being repurposed for the basket enemies in Thieves' Den. Plus, the gem icon and numbers are completely different, using early models that rotate back and forth unlike the final game. As for Crop Circle Country, the cow abduction minigame has some strange choices. There's an additional barn directly behind the final game's spawn point. Strangely, it was removed and placed with literally nothing, so the geometry abruptly cuts off into nothingness in the rental copy. However, Spyro originally could have explored this minigame on foot, as shown off in the game's trailer. When flamed, the cows travelled to that additional barn. There's really no reason this would have been a feature unless the minigame's original concept was different. Monkey Monastery statues are also golden here, as we've previously known thanks to the game's trailer. Wait a second. The game's trailer and these clips share a lot of similarities. It's almost like a lot of the footage used here is the full version of the trailer clips. The end portal is also entirely missing, much like the demo. Spyro also lacks his sliding animation for slides, exactly how the E3 build had unfinished tank animations, as found out by enhancing the picture taken at the booth. And finally, we also get a look at the early Jurassic jungle enemy. We hope you enjoyed this very deep look into the game. It was a true honour to research and a wonderful time. Thank you for watching.